So there are 3 things that you can do to change your life in 1 year. Firstly, you can change your environment. Secondly, you can change your brain, so the way that you think. Thirdly, you can go straight to changing your behavior. Maybe start exercising, start meditating. In this video, we're not going to talk about number 3. We know that to change our life, we can exercise and we can meditate a little more and maybe read some books. What I want to talk about is number 2, how to change your thinking to change your life. There is just no way that you could do these things for a year and they wouldn't change your life. Number 1, present moment reps. So in which of these scenarios do you think that you would feel the happiest? Scenario A, you are on your morning commute and you are noticing what's around you. You're focusing on your commute itself. Scenario B, you're on your morning commute and you're thinking about the movie that you watched the other night. According to some pretty extensive research, the answer is A. And not even just by a little, like by a lot. We are much happier, as it turns out, when we're focused on the task in front of us. Even if it's a neutral or boring task like commuting or like washing the dishes or tidying up. And if we are significantly happier when our mind isn't wandering, it just makes sense to practice not mind wandering. And one way to practice getting into the habit of not mind wandering is doing present moment reps as regularly as you can in your days. And that might sound high effort, but it's actually one of the most low effort ways that you can change your life in a year, because you don't need to do anything different. Instead, start by picking just one thing that you already do in your day. So brushing your teeth, getting dressed, having a shower, and call that your present moment practice time. This is when you do your present moment reps. That's when you turn on all of these fun senses and you dial back on your mind wandering. And as the year goes on, add in other activities. Integrate these little present moment reps all throughout your day. It's kind of just like dropping down, doing a little push-up, but instead you're just focusing your attention on the present moment. And I know that this sounds like something that's really little and it's something that's really trivial, but the research shows that we are just much happier when we're in the present moment. So it just makes sense to practice being more in the present moment. And if you do that for a year, your life is going to change. Number 2, map out your habit loops. More people need to talk about this. It's been one of my favorite discoveries of this year. So you've probably heard of a habit loop if you've read books like Atomic Habit or The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Basically, you've got a trigger, your alarm going off, a behavior, having a drink of water, a reward, not feeling thirsty. Some habit loops are much more negative, and usually, interestingly, it's these negative habit loops that we just don't seem to be aware of. It's like they're running our life in the background. We're not even conscious of them until we start mapping them out. For example, you feel bored. You open TikTok. Immediate reward, get some dopamine, don't feel bored. Result, feel more irritable, don't get things done, have a worse sleep. One of the most useful things that you can do that will change your life in 1 year is to start mapping out these mental habit loops and then updating them with curiosity and mindful awareness. It's one thing to be aware that something makes you feel bad, like I know that if I eat too much sugar, doesn't feel good. It's a whole nother thing to be mindfully aware in the moment of how bad you actually feel. Really dropping into your body and noticing how it feels after you've overindulged in some chocolate, or really getting into your body and feeling how it feels to be 4 hours deep in TikTok. So this is straight from neuroscientist Dr. Judd Brewer, and the way that he explains it is, if you want to change something, you have to rub your brain's little orbitofrontal cortex nose in its own poop so that it clearly smells how stinky it is. And every time you pay attention to these actions, you become more aware of what you get from them. When you become really mindful and really aware of how trash you feel after you do something, you're updating your brain's reward value for that thing. You're letting your brain know, like, hey, that actually feels horrible. And the more you do that, the less you do those habits. I read a lot of books because I love widening my knowledge. It makes my brain really happy. But sometimes I don't feel like reading a full book, but I do want to understand the concepts and ideas in those books. In those times, I open up Blinkist, which allows you to understand the most important ideas in over 5,500 nonfiction books and podcasts. You get to be educated and entertained at the same time, and you can listen to Blinkist when you're doing things that you would already do in your days. So the other day, I was going on a long drive and I put on the book Altered Traits by Daniel Goleman and Richard Davidson on Blinkist. And in it, they talked about how regular meditators have a way lower stress reaction, and that's measured by things like their heart rate, their cortisol, their blood pressure. And the longer people have meditated, the faster they recover to stress. This actually was a book that I had read before, but I enjoyed it so much and I wanted to go back to it and really understand those core concepts as well as remind myself of those core concepts. And that's exactly what I got. I was so glad that I listened to it. So Blinkist Connect is a really cool new feature that Blinkist has that I've never seen any other app do, and that's where you can share your premium plan with a friend. So your plan can be shared by 2 different accounts at no extra cost. And you can recommend titles, you can share favorites. So I shared my account with my sister because we always give each other book recommendations, and now we can just hop into Blinkist, listen, understand, get educated on the key ideas within books, and then talk to each other about them. So you guys can get 25% off of a premium plan. Just click the link down in the description below to get your 7-day free trial, or you can use the QR code. Click the link in my description below to get 25% off after your 7-day free trial. Number 3, evidence journaling. So most people at the start of the year, maybe their birthday, write down a few goals that they want to achieve. This time, write down a few goals that you want to achieve, and then write down the reasons why you haven't already achieved those goals. Write down the assumptions that you're making about why you haven't already gotten there, or the reasons why you think that you won't achieve these goals. This isn't about being a downer. It sounds negative, it sounds counterintuitive, but there is a point to it. So for example, you might write down, well, I haven't achieved these goals already because I'm not a consistent person. I can't be consistent. Then get a new journal, open to a fresh page, and you want to flip that idea around. So you might write down, I can be consistent. Or if it's more of a perfectionist thing, you might write down, it's possible to be successful without being 100% consistent. You don't have to believe these statements yet, but for the next 6 months, start documenting anything that indicates that these statements might be true. Anything that you see, you experience, you hear, you read, write it down. And don't just write it down. When you're writing down, you want to almost re-experience it, re-understand it, own it, get invested in it. If it's an experience that you had, relive it in your head over and over. Almost in a way, this is kind of brainwashing yourself, but in the best way. If in 6 months' time you have 4 or 5 pages filled with information that indicates that something might be true, that it's possible that something different to what you previously believed could actually be true, you are much more likely to believe it. And your beliefs drive your behaviors, they drive how you feel, and they drive your outcomes. Number 4, thought training. So there are so many different ways to respond to a negative thought, but the main ones that I have heard over and over again are whenever you have a negative thought, question it. So really put it on trial. Is it really true? What's the possibility of it being true? Again, sometimes it feels unhelpful. Instead, I like to see the messages, thoughts, images that my brain sends me kind of like the things that show up on my For You page on TikTok. There's an algorithm. It presents me with things that it thinks might engage me. I choose whether I want to engage with those things, whether I want to watch those things, or whether I want to move on and shift my attention elsewhere. If I was on TikTok and I started watching all the couples prank videos that came up on my For You page in full, even if I was sitting there going like, oh, I hate these are the worst, if I kept on watching them, TikTok would give me more of them. So instead, I scroll past them and I focus my attention on another TikTok that I want more of. Basically, I train my TikTok algorithm with my attention. Similarly, every single person, no matter how confident they are, no matter how mentally healthy they are, they all have negative thoughts, feelings about themselves, about other people, about the world. There's nothing abnormal about negative thoughts. It's when we eat into them, it's when we engage with them, it's when we pay attention to them that they start to get more power over us. I really like the mosquito bite analogy. So if you get a mosquito bite, if you keep on itching at it, you keep on paying attention to it, it's just gonna get bigger and bigger. It's when you leave it alone that it goes away on its own. And keep in mind, you are not your brain. You are not an algorithm. You are separate to your brain, but your brain's just throwing things at you to see what holds your attention. You can't choose what thoughts appear, but you can choose what you engage with. Similarly to TikTok, you can't choose what appears on your For You page at first. You can choose what you engage with. Obviously, this is something that you can train with meditation. Meditation's gonna help, but you don't have to meditate. You can just notice your negative thoughts as they arise. Ask yourself, is it helpful to think about this? If it's not, choose not to give it too much attention. Your thoughts might play out in the background, but you don't need to give them attention. It sounds simplistic, it makes a difference. Number 5, cognitive restructuring through experiments. So I have 2 nieces. When they were babies, they used to just drop things. They'd be sitting in their little high chairs, they'd drop food, they'd drop plates, they'd drop toys, whatever was in front of them, they'd be dropping it. And I talked about it to my sister because I was like, oh my God, they really just drop things, don't they? And she was like, yeah, no, there's a thing that babies do. It's kind of like they're doing little physics experiments. They're trying to figure out, what happens when they drop it. Does it happen every single time? And as it turns out, the more surprised they are by their results, the more that they're learning, according to the baby research. Psychologist Dr. Michael Roussel actually believes that surprise is one of the best ways to change our beliefs. And it's through our prediction errors that we tend to learn. So in 2023, you want to use this by conducting your own experiments and challenging your own beliefs. Start out every experiment with a hypothesis, because you can't really be surprised if you don't have an idea of what you think is going to happen. Begin by thinking about the worst outcomes that your mind is already picturing. So if you're going to a restaurant to eat on your own, worst outcome could be someone points and laughs and goes, oh my god, that person is sitting and eating on their own. Everyone stares at you. And then picture the best outcomes that your mind could predict. So maybe the waitress is so nice to you, maybe no one really looks at you, they give you a little glance, but ultimately they get caught up in their own conversation. Then drop your attachment to any of those outcomes and go into your experiment like a curious scientist. You are just a little ball of interest. Document whatever surprises you, go out and do it again and see if you can recreate the same results. If you liked this video, I would really recommend watching my video on 7 ways to change your life in 1 year. That video is a great video to accompany this one. Has a lot of similar things that you can do that, if done over a period of a year, can change your life. That will be linked on the screen as well as down below. I appreciate you so very much, and I'll see you soon.